Hi, and welcome to the Imposter No More, You Are a Superpower panel. I'm Mariana, and I'll just start with a little bit about me. I was born in India, and I moved to Canada when I was in grade 9. I participated in Technovation when I was in grade 11, and since then, I've continued down the STEM path, and I'm currently studying software engineering at the University of Waterloo. I'm personally really excited about this panel because I think a lot of imposter syndrome panels are about what imposter syndrome is and how everyone faces it. But this panel is really special because it's about overcoming imposter syndrome and finding your superpower. Our speakers will address imposter syndrome, but reframe it with anecdotes, advice, and tactics that'll hopefully help all of us move forward into an empowered way of thinking. So with that, let me introduce our lovely speakers. We have Carly Cooper, who is the head of culture and transformation at VI and is also a professor at the University of Southern California. We have Jun Sugiyama, who is the director of the Vodafone Americas Foundation. We have Sandy Dilly, who is the manager of learning and development at Harman. And we have Abigail Gilmore, who is the manager for project management and business transformation at TE Connectivity. Thank you all so much for being here. I'd like to give you all a really warm welcome and thank you for spending your time with us on this Saturday. So first, let's talk about what imposter syndrome is. There's so many different perspectives on this. According to some studies, about 75% of women executives experience imposter syndrome, which is crazy considering everything that they've achieved. And so I just want to ask, what thoughts, feelings, beliefs come to mind when you first hear this term? And have you yourselves experienced any of these feelings? Maybe if we could start off with Carly.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Ariana, for the introduction and the great question to kick us off. Yeah, what is imposter syndrome and why is everybody talking about it? And it's on social media, and as you quoted, 75% of people say they've experienced it. And let's break it down a little bit. I think, has everybody experienced doubt at some point in time in their lives? Probably. And yet, are we imposters? Definitely not. So for me, I'm trying to rethink through what is imposter syndrome and be like, what does this make sense anymore? Is this me? Is this not me? But recognizing that, yeah, we've always had doubts, and yet believing in myself and not underestimating myself when I go into different milestones, different moments, different meetings.
Awesome, thanks for that. Would anyone else also like to share on this question? Abigail, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think to echo some of what Carly said, I mean, imposter syndrome sounds like this very scary term and can feel a little bit intimidating. But honestly, I'm a little bit surprised at the 75% statistic because I think it should be more. I think we all probably feel this at one point or another. And so I think that it's really just about understanding that and making sure that you know that you're not alone and that it's something that you can definitely overcome.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you, because I've also experienced these feelings myself, and so hearing, kind of reaffirms that things are okay. June, would you like to go next?
Sure thing. Frankly speaking, I didn't know what it was. So I had to look it up and come to find out it's something that's been around for generations. Obviously, you can tell from my gray hair, although I've been gray since in my 20s, that I have a little bit of experience and probably the older of the bunch. So I can tell you that in my early career days, it wasn't called imposter syndrome. It was probably something like the lack of confidence or insecure. I think that was the word, insecure. So it's unfortunate that something like this has existed through generations and it's still around, that we should have probably conquered it by now. But with groups like this, all of us here to help, hopefully we can get rid of something like this. And it is something that you can take care of. It is something that you'll probably have less and less of as you, grow in your career.
Thank you, June. Sandy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I actually have kind of a story about this. So, somebody, a woman executive that I've been lucky enough to work, for her and alongside her, kind of off and on for the past about 8 years or so. I think at one point we were at like a work lunch or something, and I kind of said I was preparing for something, and I sort of said offhand, "When does the feeling?" I said, "I'm really looking forward to the feeling that everybody's going to suddenly find out that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm waiting for that feeling to go away." And she's like, "Oh, it never goes away." And I was like, "What?" So actually just hearing somebody who I admire a ton, someone who's super successful, career-wise, I mean, family-wise, she's somebody I've admired for a long time. Just to hear that from somebody who is extremely, successful and powerful made me realize like, oh, it's not just me. I'm not alone in this. And even people who, are really successful feel this way sometimes. And that was proof to me that not only did it exist, but that you could overcome it.
Yeah, and that's so powerful just knowing that, yes, there are other people who experience this, and yes, you can overcome this. So, with that, let's talk a bit about how we can go from self doubt to becoming more self confident. What type of practical advice would you give to those of us who are experiencing these feelings, which, from the sounds of it, is probably all of us? Um, is there something that you say to yourself to make these feelings go away, or something else that you do to manage these feelings? June, would you like to go first?
Sure. I mean, famous artists, musicians, people who are on stage, they get nervous before they go on. So it's a common thing, no matter how much you know, no matter how many times you practice. But know that you're there for a reason. You got to your position for a reason. You must have gotten there somehow. It's not all pure luck, or it's not all, by chance that, whether it's your studies or whether it's, the amount of work you've done to be where you are. So understand that you're there for a reason, to be able to make a change, or help your project or product progress. You're there to work together to get something done. So don't always concentrate all on yourself. You do know what you know. And later, if you find out that you don't know something, you can always honestly say, you know what, that's kind of baffling me right now. I can get back to you later. So that's always an option as well.
Right. And so being able to fearlessly say, this is something I don't know, can I learn? That can kind of be a superpower in a sense. Would you agree?
Totally agree. And, the fact that you have an opportunity to find out more and to be able to come back with more information, I think is a great power in itself.
Thank you so much, June. Abigail, would you like to go next? Or Carly, sorry, I just saw you unmute.
Well, I was just thinking, June, what a powerful moment that is in a meeting if you say, "Hey, can I get back to you on that?" You actually are modeling for everybody else in that room that it's okay to have questions and to have doubts and to further explore. It actually puts you in a strong leadership position in creating that culture within that meeting and in that moment that everybody's got some doubts, everybody's got some questions, and that we will actually all get smarter if we put those questions on the table and don't just hide them under the table and pretend like we do know. Now, I do think there's a little bit of an element of sometimes, what do I say to myself? Like, fake it till you make it. Right. And that was always a positive term, right? Sometimes that might even just be in cooking, right? You just fake it a little bit while you're making it. But having that confidence or just knowing it's okay. No one knows the script in your head except you, right? Oh, I wish it would have gone this way. I wish it would have gone that way. Only you know that. So going in with confidence, with a little bit of doubt, sometimes you're going to have some doubts, but you're just going to go on stage and great points, June, that every performer has that. Maybe it's that little bit of motivation to go out there and do that, but also in asking those questions, you can really, it goes from in your mind, you're like, oh, I don't know. But by asking those questions, you're allowing everybody else to ask questions too.
That's so true. I feel like anytime I'm in class and I'm thinking of a question, but I'm too scared to say it, and someone else says it, that automatically makes me feel like so much better and makes me feel like I can also ask questions. So that's such an important point. Carly, on that note, would you like to share any other anecdotes or advice that you might have for becoming more self-confident?
Oh, hey, I'm this is it's exciting to be on this panel because I've got some ideas, but I learned from all of our other panelists, and probably we'll hear from in the chat. I don't know if we have chat with the participants. How do you fake it till you make it? What are the things that you tell yourself right before you go up on stage or go into a meeting? I think Sandy's got some ideas.
So I have a lot of experience with this because and this is kind of a superpower that maybe sometimes feeling like I don't quite fit in. I don't like to use the term imposter syndrome. I don't think that that applies to me necessarily, but I definitely have moments where I'm like, I don't know if, maybe I don't know as much as everybody else, or maybe I'm not as much of an expert. And so I feel kind of out of place, right? And for me, the superpower that that has given me is I'm able to pay attention to how I feel about certain things. So I'm able to recognize what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So over the past few years, especially, I've been giving myself the extra challenge to do things that I don't necessarily think I'm good at doing, or maybe I just don't like doing them. You know what I mean? And there's a difference between the two. Like, are you actually not good at something, or do you just not enjoy doing it? So giving myself the challenge and signing up for things that may be challenging for me is a way that I've overcome imposter syndrome. Just a ton in the past couple years. Is just has everything gone perfectly? No. Have I left an important meeting or an executive event feeling like I got it? No. But it's great practice and it's helped me overcome a lot. And like Carly said, nobody else knows the script that's in your head, so they don't know that I meant to say something and I said something else instead. You know what I mean? So just giving yourself the opportunity to practice and giving yourself the opportunity to say, hey, that didn't go great, but that was good practice for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what all of the other panelists have said. But I think something I'll add is, in situations where you're going through doubts, I think sometimes it helps me to look back on some of the things that I have accomplished. And, to what June said, you're there for a reason. And so the question is, how did I get here? And looking at some of that evidence, and also maybe asking your manager or your peers for feedback. Maybe there truly is something that you feel like you need to work on to make you feel more comfortable in your role. And that's okay. It's okay to be at any point in your learning journey. And actually, just a short story about that. So recently I attended a training, and it was for managers specifically, but it was about getting your colleagues through different stages of their learning journey within a specific role and the amount of support that everyone needs at each stage. And I think that really hit me because of this conversation, because it's okay if you're just starting out at something and maybe you need more support from a manager or from a colleague, or it's okay if you are more comfortable taking everything on and working at an individual level, or anywhere in between. And so I think just recognizing that you're not alone and it's okay to be having doubts and thinking what you're thinking was really, really big for me personally.
Right. And so self-reflection, even in a way, can be a superpower that we use to overcome imposter syndrome. I really love that. Thank you for that.
I wanted to add that
Yeah.
exactly as Abigail says, you don't have to, I don't think everyone knows everything 100%. So that's okay. And then it's been proven and a fact that men perform thinking that they know everything and come to find out that's not necessarily true. And then women, on the other hand, go to their meetings thinking they don't know anything. But you don't have to know 100%. You do know some things, and it's better than speaking all the time and thinking you know all the answers and being proven wrong all the time, perhaps. So it's okay. And there's not one size fits all. I think it's really important for you to be yourself.
I love that you shared about how it's usually women who are having these doubts. In all of your personal experience, do you think that this is true, where it's women who usually face more imposter syndrome, or is this sort of just like a generalization? Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of men who have doubts, but statistically speaking, people who, what have they said? That there are more men who apply for jobs, even though they only know maybe 30% or have, 30% of the skills, whereas women feel they need to have 100% of the skills before they apply. And, do understand that there are different standards, no matter how, we try to equal the playing field, that there are different standards that happen with the people around us, as well as the way some corporations are set up. So, we have hurdles in our jobs that, we have to work hard. We have things we don't know, but then there are extra hurdles for women. And then when you come to women of color, I can speak personally for the Asian women, the Asian girls. We're raised differently. We're told not to speak up too much. We're told not to stand up. We're in a culture where men are more valued. So those hurdles are something that we have to kind of encounter. So do understand that it may be even harder for us. And if it's really uncomfortable for you, just take it easy and take it slow. Maybe tackle one thing at a time, and it'll become more comfortable for you.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much, June. And especially to start to think about other people and their backgrounds is also so important when thinking about how imposter syndrome, affects you and, just based on your background. So one more question that I had was, how do you actually make this a way of life rather than just small things that you do? How do you overcome imposter syndrome in a way that's lifelong, would you say?
I loved what Sandy was saying earlier, and going for it, right? At trying new things. You know, instead of, you know, I don't know if I have all the qualifications. Go for it. And I know that Abigail and June, we've all said all as well as, and then reflecting upon it, right? That power of reflection. So go for it and then go, well, I learned something in that situation and what went well and what didn't. I learned maybe something that I liked, something that I wished I would have done in advance. But to go for it is a really powerful, I mean, that's the most actionable thing you can do is to try and then learn from it. And recognize, as we've all discussed, we all have doubts. Give yourself a few minutes for it and be like, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes to have doubts. And then I'm going to take the rest of the time to get to work and to go for it. I, in looking through imposter syndrome, someone said to me, "Do you have time for these doubts?" No, I've got plenty of things to do. I don't have a lot of time to question my expertise, my intelligence, if I should be there. I don't have time for that. So go for it. Recognize you're going to have some doubts. Give yourself a little bit of time to do it, but then get after it, and then learn from it.
Sandy, I was wondering if you actually had any examples of things that you tried that were different or scary that you could share with us.
I have so many. Okay, so there's a couple. I can give you a non-professional one and I can give you a professional one. But one of them is that I train my dogs, and I have a dog that I was training for probably one of the most difficult sports in the world, right? And we had national judges coming in, and her and I trained for years, right? And then we got out onto the field, and I was nervous, and I knew that with her temperament, after training her for many years, I knew that with her temperament, she wasn't going to be like a world champion. You know what I mean? It was just something that she enjoyed doing and that I wanted us to try together. And our first national competition, we got out onto the field and we got kicked off within about 5 minutes because she saw all the new stuff, and it wasn't like her regular training, and she looked at me like, what do I, you know what I mean? And I couldn't say anything to her. So it was really funny, but at the same time, you know, I knew that maybe it wasn't something that we were going to succeed in 100%, but you can't embarrass me at a dog competition anymore. I got kicked off by a French judge. Like, you can't embarrass me anymore. You know, it was a very humbling experience, and you know, it didn't go great, but I knew that she wanted to do it for fun, and so we did it for fun. And something professional, actually, that I'm still working on is a month-long event about quality, about built-in quality, right? I work for Harman International. We do a lot of engineering. We do a lot of innovation in the technology and the audio spaces. And so we're really focusing on quality this month. Actually, next month in November. So starting in about June, I started getting the team together, and I had never done this before, but you know, I took it because I knew it was going to be an experience that I would learn from. And has everything gone smoothly? No. You know, getting everybody around the world on the same phone call, getting everybody to understand exactly what's expected and to deliver everything on time and in preparation for this really large event has definitely been something that I'm going to feel 100% more comfortable doing next year, just because I learned a lot from this year. So because I volunteered and I tried my best, you know, so it'll still be good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's awesome that you're, you know, putting yourselves in like these situations where you can learn and grow. And I think that's something that all of us should do, because hopefully with every sort of failure, we grow more and have a little less imposter syndrome.
Well, as a child, I was really, really shy. Like, if you told me I was going to be doing something like this, I would have been like, absolutely not. There's no way, you know, because I was kind of that, like, that kid that just waited until I was spoken to. Or I remember, yeah, one time I had to do a speech in 6th grade and I was so quiet, nobody could hear me because I was so nervous. It was super embarrassing. So yeah, to give myself the strength to try, and to give myself the strength to maybe miss the mark and then reflect back on it, I think is really cool. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and so the one thing I was wondering is kind of where the strength to try new things can come from. And I know that Abigail mentioned that, you know, just like upskilling yourself is one way to, you know, overcome these feelings. So I don't know if you wanted to talk a bit more about that, or maybe how you can use that as a superpower or a strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of different ways to do this, and everyone really has their own internal thoughts on this. But you're right. I mean, something that personally has worked for me is that skill base, and I'm a very fact-based person. So I like to look at, you know, what have I accomplished or what have I done? Where are my gaps? What do I feel like I need to work on? And how can I go about fixing those, or not necessarily fixing, but working on those and overcoming those challenges. And so I think that, you know, having a diverse skill range or feeling confident in your skills makes you go into situations more confidently and feeling like you can take on any new challenge. And personally, that's something that I've gotten feedback on a lot, is the ability to stay calm in chaotic situations, or if anything comes up, and it's because you know that no matter what happens, somehow you'll find a way through it, you know? And even if it isn't something that you can handle, or you know how to handle, somebody does. And somebody on your team, you know, you can always reach out to other people for help, and bring them in, and knowing who has the expertise on that. And so I think, you know, it's a tough question of how do you go about trying things. I think you just have to try them. And also, you know, I love self-reflection. And so I'm always reflecting, you know, how risk averse am I? Am I constantly looking for reasons not to do something? Or am I taking too many risks maybe? And one question that came up recently is, you know, what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I don't take this risk or take this challenge? And what am I missing out on by not doing that?
Right. That's, you know, that's like the other way to think about it. You know, instead of I'm scared to do this, what would happen if I didn't do it? That's such a
Right.
powerful message. And at this point, I actually wanted to ask everyone who's listening into this conversation, what are some of your superpowers? I think all of us have superpowers and so much to contribute to the world. So if you could put in the comments, what is something that's your superpower? I'd love to, you know, read about it. And also I'd love to hear from all our panelists about maybe one thing that they would identify as their superpower. Maybe we could just go in a circle or something, starting with June.
Sure thing. I think your confirmation, your own confirmation, is something I think is your superpower. And I can give you an example. There was a time where my boss and I were negotiating a contract with this consultant for training. And we were going on and on for a few hours. And this guy was just getting us around in circles and not giving us exact dates, cost, you know, and committing to anything. And so I just kind of got all my wits about me. This was my first contract to negotiate, and really, you know, stood firm in what I needed. And finally, he agreed to dates and costs, and we were able to sign the contract. And I was really proud of myself. And after the guy left, my boss looks at me, who was male. He looks at me and he goes, you know, you're really aggressive. And I was so absolutely heartbroken that, you know, he didn't tell me I did a good job. And gosh, we finally got this signed, and it was really hard work. And, you know, it really shook me up for quite some time. But then I realized, hey, I'm the one who got this contract done. And he didn't get this guy to come to terms, you know. So I said to myself, you know, this is really a good job. And I got this done. And it was really hard because, you know, I had to be firm, which is not really my nature. And so sometimes you're your own cheerleader, you know, and that's okay because you know what you did and you know how hard you worked. And then other times you're going to have lots of people saying that you did really great work. And women tend to not accept that. And I say, take it all in. Say thank you. You know, that's really nice of you to say that. That also gives you incredible energy and incredible superpower as well.
That's awesome. And again, so powerful. Thank you so much, June. Sandy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think that my superpower is my self-awareness. Nobody knows me better than me. And I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm worth, and I know that I should never feel like I'm apologizing for the space I occupy in the world. So I think that growing up being kind of aware and comparing yourself to other people a lot gives you more self-awareness than a lot of people have. And that's pretty cool. That's my superpower.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy. I also see in the chat, Nikki says, what's the worst that could happen? And that usually gives me a lot of confidence. So yeah. Carly, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think my superpowers are I'm resilient. I've resilient, resourceful, and empathetic. And resilient is the positive reframing of stubborn potentially. I I'm not going to give up, right? And I'm going to learn from my mistakes and keep on going. So it is not always easy, but I'm realizing in and going through things, you're like, I'm pretty resilient. I can weather some storms.
Yeah, and just like June mentioned, she was called aggressive, but she said, no, I'm not aggressive. I'm firm. I'm powerful. And, again, you're saying that I'm not stubborn. I'm resilient. And I love that. Abigail, would you like to go next?
Yeah. And I love what everyone has said so far. I feel like I could have said some of these things as well, but actually, I think that mine is adaptability. That's something that I feel like I touched on it a little bit before, but I feel like you can get thrown into any situation and you'll learn how to do it if you don't know how to do it now. But also with that, I want to clarify, I don't mean adapting to what other people think I should be or adapting and changing who I am based on different situations. I think it's important that you know who you are and you maintain true to yourself. But because of that, you can take on any challenge.
Again, amazing advice. And yeah, at this point, maybe I'll just share some of the superpowers that our alumni are sharing. So someone says never giving up. Someone says don't not fearing failure and being resilient. And someone else also says being strong and thinking about when they've gone through difficult circumstances so that, when they go through them again, they can get through it. And that's amazing. And at this point, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for such an insightful conversation. I've learned so much through this conversation about how I can, overcome imposter syndrome in my own life, just by reflecting upon what I'm doing, by, doing things that scare me. And I think this is something that I'm going to take away and try to practice for a long time.